Indeed.
Hey, Bob, can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Now, Kelly and Mike, okay? Both of you are sitting in the mayor's seat and my seat. So I expect complete sanitation and disinfectation, okay?
What was that? Bob?
You're doing a sound check.
No, the pandemic is not over.
Sound like Joe Biden. The pandemic is over.
Is it? 2022.
It's the guest, this word guest.
Oh, it's just the guest.
Is it warm in here? Or is it just me?
It's warm.
Okay.
Menopause?
No,
You wanted
not
something
yet, but I
cheese?
think I got some years yet. I'm 56.
I don't. I don't have some years.
One thing that makes me excited is just
7 p.m. is like my witching hour.
It's a miserable day today. It was like 90 degrees again today. Just when I thought we had.
Yeah, it could be Friday. I'm just kind of like, please don't be awful.
Austin, this is like the best view ever that I think I've
It's 6
seen.
whenever you're ready.
Front row seat.
What, Bob?
I said this is the best positioning of the camera so far. I mean, it's like I got a front row seat. I feel like I'm sitting behind home run or the home
Right? I liked it over there.
plate at the
See
Mets
me.
I
game.
have one of these forever as well. Well, I'm no longer the president. It's great. I will not throw this at anyone. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Marvin Planning Board to order. We have a quorum. The agenda, and are there any changes?
Staff.
What's that? Not from. Right, if someone would like to make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And has everyone had a chance to look at the previous minutes? The previous.
And then there's a statement that just says the last meeting was canceled.
Okay. If there are no changes, if someone could make a motion.
So moved.
Favor?
Need a
Oh, no, wait a second. Sorry. You think we'd all be. Okay, so moved. All right. That's not helpful. Thank you. I'll cheat here. And so, public comment. Okay, we're just going to move on. All right. So the first item of discussion is recommendation branch, and that is going to be led by Hunter.
Okay, so apologies for maybe some typos and stuff in the memo. I was on my deathbed last week, so I just noticed the first one and C. So miscommunicate or just typos or no clear understanding on anything in the packets. The estates of Marvin Branch, developers Jones Homes or Ben, has submitted an application for their final plat for the development. The construction by council back in of this year, or sorry, actually January. and they've received all approvals from outside agency and actually have. So their final step is to have their final plat approved. Be approved if all the infrastructure and improvements have been put in, or if they bought improvements of that project. They are currently putting in water and sewer, and we'll have all within the next month or two, and then are probably going to bond the remainder of those improvements, and those bond provided to me and then provided to our engineer and to council for full approval. With that being said, pretty much the final plat, there's no changes in it from what you guys have construction plans earlier this year, as well as just per our final plats, basically the planning board for recommendation and council for final approval. I can go through the project. If you guys have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions?
This is basically the last administrative.
Just like I said, per our ordinance, final plats are supposed to be approved by council and require a plan. Before the development's been approved, this is just their final step. There's really not anything that's changed. Bond will be provided, but once again, that's something for our engineer to review and confirm the prices approved as well with the final plat by council.
Okay, look. Or comments, if someone would like to make a motion to recommend.
Your system.
See that. Would you want to kick us off?
I was just going to lay low. First,
I make a motion to recommend approval for the final plat and construction contingent upon village engineer approval of the bond estimate.
I will second.
There you go.
All in favor? So moved.
Nice and easy. Okay.
All right, got it up right. Okay.
Wait, you're not going to hang out?
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Miss us. I know it was a little confusing. I was like, what's he doing here? Yeah. All right, second item is discussion and recommendation of temporary use permit application for village.
So the village will be hosting a trunk or treat event at the park this year, and per festive event or event at the park, you must receive a temporary approved by council. So with that being said, the first step is staff review ordinances, and now it's being brought to you guys for you planning board to provide a recommendation to council. Forward. Don't ask me any questions on the event because I don't know them all.
Why do they call it?
No, trunk or treat. They open up trunks. They're in the back of your trunk and the kids go by you. They're not the trust eating exhaust. It's just,
It's really
It's-
nice in rural areas where kids don't necessarily.
or you live in a neighborhood like ours where there's no streetlights and you're afraid of being eaten by a coyote. So sure.
Gravel roads and no light,
Break the coyotes.
streetlights.
Yeah, yeah, he's getting close. Apply for one of these things. I guess it's just for my question.
Mhm.
Only thing about this is that it doesn't even have a proof things.
For the
with it.
event,
Yeah,
it should.
okay.
I don't know.
I think it's October 28th.
I mean, I was just wondering, like, when I looked over this, I was like, so do we,
Yeah, it's on-
as a side note of randomly approving things with that? I mean, I'm not saying.
Yeah,
yes, but, like,
no.
Clearly, this is gonna be sometime in October. Like,
Typically,
it could be a monthly activity.
yeah, typically, no, like if you guys want to recall back to the fireworks, back, I think about in May. They did have a date. Typically they do, like I said, last week, because I was out sick, so,
It's Friday. It's Friday, October 28th.
okay. I'll make sure that gets added, updated on the permit application.
Yeah, on the application, it's. So is the application then going to change? Because if it's not on here or there's not something to put in their date, people won't always do it. So,
Can we approve it with? I mean,
Yeah.
technically the village is the applicant, and so I've already wrote the date down.
Perfect.
It goes to council, will have the date of the event on there for their approval.
Awesome.
But typically, yes, for any application that we do receive for the event is.
That was my only,
Okay.
then I will move to October 28th. Is that
all in favor? Stipulation that someone has to dress up.
Too late.
And-
Would have been approved. Sorry.
Cats under.
We already closed the matter.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. My favorite holiday. All right. Hunter.
Okay, so this is gonna be your guys' attention, kind of having some preliminary discussion over this tonight. Basically, we received the Winmore subdivision right down here off of Marvin or Waxhaw Marvin Road. It's 12 homes. Currently in our ordinance, we don't allow gates. You can't gate a public road. You can't gate any type of public right of way. Per our ordinance, we only allow public dedicated roads. So pretty much in any new development, there's that right of way and then be dedicated to the village once completion and accepted by the council for that changed probably 2012, 2013. We did a lot as a private road. But the biggest thing here is that some of the surrounding developments in the county, you know, they allow, like if you look at their final plat, they're all platted as private. Therefore, legally, you can gate them. So with all that being said, a text amendment, you know, I know this has been discussed by council in the past, as there's been other developments that have inquired about. With the other thing that's coming into this is there's a potential. I'm gonna get into all the details that they want to do private roads and again. So there's kind of a two-factor driving this potential text amendment. The other thing that then that we could do a text amendment to one allow for new developments. It would still be my recommendation and everything I looked at, we're still gonna and have some stipulation that if the developer in any new development wants to propose private roads, if there's a fee in lieu or something, they'll still. But then it kind of allows for the developer to make the roads private. That development if they would like to so choose. The other tricky part about this text amendment. Right of way abandonment / going from public to private. That's where I don't want to, as I move forward in this section, trying to make sure it's perfect, because I don't really have, you know, from a staff level, I'm not for or against the research and really figure out how the best way this can be done is, if we do have developments to go from public roads to private, to make sure that it either, if they're already within our system, our POW bill system for our maintenance, is not going to hurt. Place like if your development's been resurfaced or repaid by the village using, you know, our POW bill funds would be eligible to do this. It's also going to require probably like all 100% of the homeowners to sign off on it. Stuff like that is because I want to make sure like small development 12 homeowners, but I don't want somewhere like Firethorn or, you know, one of these larger developments that's and you don't have to, is they're going to be taking over the roads from either NCDOT or us, and they'll be responsible for maintaining them. They need to be aware of that, that long-term cost. And that's partly like any new, if we're gonna allow it for new developments, like built to our engineer standards and all that stuff, so it's at least like good, so if the develop, like that neighborhood 5-6 years down the road wants to come and petition their roads, they have a good base and will probably still beat our standard, because the wear and tear on truck and a bus, if that should not be anything detrimental to where it's really standard, then the only stipulation if they want to do that is they would have to remove the gate, obviously. I know that was a lot of information. So with all that being said, go ahead.
So if, I guess pragmatically, why would, if these 12 homes want to take care of paving this, so lost long-term strategic investment, like you said, right? If we just repaved it last year, well, now's a great they pay back to the village or
Mhm.
whatever. And so I appreciate you taking the due diligence to look, take that over in the long run for the neighbor. Why wouldn't, I don't understand why collectively we would be opposed to,
Be-
but since it's a choice.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
There is a very large neighborhood in Marvin who wanted to gate their road. It is a public road, and many people use it to go through that neighborhood. So it's not like it's a dead end road. Like Meadowlark is dead end. Like
Right.
there's no reason anyone should go down that road unless you're going to
Right.
a neighbor's home. So, but there are other public roads that go through neighborhoods, and you can go out to the other side of Joe Kerr
Right.
or Tom Short or wherever. So having neighbors decide that they want to close that off, that's not really fair to the community, right? So it's like, there's that, like,
That's what happened to the Providence Downs.
Right, and to PDS, except for the fact that like the people that were driving through there, some, right, just playing devil's advocate, they don't have the same vested interest, just like the people who drive through here at 70 miles an hour don't have the vested interest not to end up in my front yard, like they did 2 weeks ago. Right, so I mean, I think,
no, I,
right, so
yeah.
if I
that's
was a
what I'm saying.
parent in there and I saw, Kelly, I saw you driving through there every day,
Girl, I go the
put on the
speed.
gas.
I go the
70 miles
speed
an
limit
hour. I mean, I'm
always.
just saying, right, like I might not want people cutting through my neighborhood either.
Yeah.
And so, and at which point, right?
There's another way around. You can have
And as we talk about traffic mitigation, right, and as we kind of move forward with this, I guess a part of me says like your property, your business in a certain, in a certain setup, right? As long as you follow the rules, right? I feel like that's kind of that. And if they wanted to take it over as opposed to, I mean,
Yeah,
I can see both sides, but I also
I
think
totally
like,
get what you're saying.
I wouldn't want people cutting through, that's why I live where I live, but I wouldn't want people cutting through there just to shave 3 minutes off of their drive if they're driving through the neighborhood and don't have a vested interest in not hitting me and my dog. Cause I know that's why we talked about speed bumps and things like that. And I know that that's why PDS did it because of what was happening on Manowar, et cetera, right? So,
I don't,
yeah, people were driving through like,
But you weren't talking about BDS, were you?
It's,
so you're talking about Marvin Creek?
He was.
Yeah.
you mean Providence Downs, not PDS, not Providence Down South, the original
Or
Providence.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Original,
It's down,
original,
yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Got it.
Those roads are,
Which is-
those roads are much wider though than.
And that
But
actually,
they still didn't want people cutting through.
Right.
Right, and so I guess that's part of my point too, is like, it is and I appreciate that it's a public road, but it's also a neighborhood.
Yeah.
and there's
So
actually a couple of
certainly-
streets in Providence Towns that are in Marvin's residential district.
There's 3.
Yeah, there's 3 roads still technically in Marvin. It's in Providence. Though.
Mhm.
Okay.
Which is,
Weird.
Well-
yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think they'd have to have a case for it.
well, and so, yeah, to answer your question on why, or like why we want to deny it, well, in my experience, like making them all public is kind of the best generic standard, because what it does is that you have a general standard of roads. Long term, you don't have homeowners that either have failing HOAs or a developer that fell through, kind of like what Winmore's situation is right now, that didn't build it to a certain standard or didn't maintain it, and then it's a burden on the homeowners in the long run. And so it makes it, basically what happens is, I'll use the case that we did in Valdez, they allowed private roads. Well, a lot of these developments in Valdez got approved right before the recession. The developer fell through, all this crap. Now those roads are in terrible condition. And when I was there, I would field calls from the homeowners like, hey, we want our roads to be maintained or whatever. Well, we didn't have any authority because it wasn't public roads. So that's kind of the upside to making everything public. Then it falls on the responsibility for maintenance long-term of the village or NCDOT. As we move further as a growing organization, it's more likely going to be us and not DOT as we take over more roads.
Has council weighed in on this at all yet? I mean, if
Briefly,
they asked us to review it, I mean, if they're against it or if they're all for it, if they're unanimously on that, we're wasting our time.
We talked about it last year, and
Okay.
they wanted to revisit it when a subdivision formally made that request.
Would it be better to take their temperature and see if they want us to discuss it?
Well-
Or if they're all for it or all against it, then,
I'm doing that at the work session next week.
okay.
But tonight, like I said, it's kind of putting it on your radar and getting initial feedback. As in everything I kind of discussed on what I'm trying to put together in the text amendment and the process of right-of-way abandonment, as well as the requirements for either new developments or existing developments.
I want to ask, what's the negative of taking over? the
Will, is your
road?
mic on? Just want to make sure it's on. Okay. Make sure the mics are on if you're talking. Way it gets recorded.
What's the negative of if the road is to a standard that's sufficient and the neighborhood, it's like this one, they want to put the gates up, they're going to agree to maintain those gates. What's the the negative of taking over those roads in that neighborhood if they are up to that standard? I live in Robinwood, actually, neighborhood, and those roads are gravel, and I participate in making sure they're, maintained over the course of a couple of times a year. And we've actually even gone to Marvin to talk about maybe having them take it over, but have
You'd have to-
additional taxes or something. Yeah. And that's a little bit, it's down there. But this, I was thinking, if the roads are in good condition, because Wentmore's fairly new, and they're willing to maintain their gate, all the expenses, what's the downside of the road, which is only one road? Right?
So, yeah, so if they're wanting to put up a gate, the roads have to be private. So we
Well,
can't,
I know that's in the ordinances and everything, but I'm trying to figure out why.
why it's in a. It's just
Why-
legally you cannot deny any type of ingress egress on any platted public right of way. So
Right.
if it's
Yeah.
a public right of way and we maintain it, you can't gate it to den.
I got
It's- Yeah, that's kind of why, even though Marvin Creek has gates,
Right.
So as someone who lives on, well, has property where my ingress and egress is actually being blocked by a crazy neighbor, it's agreement, I would stress that if we go down this route, that one of the requirements have a tight, clear road maintenance
yeah.
and gate agreement. And, I don't know, 100% sounds like a lot, maybe 90. It depends on how many homeowners are there, but, you're trying to get 100% is in the sky, you know what I mean? There's
And-
always gonna be one person that,
And I'm trying to, and I know I looked at more, so I'm gathering all that information as we speak. I don't really right now, and I do plan on having that for you guys at the next meeting, as well as kind of what I'm gonna draft. Maintenance agreements will definitely be a requirement. Currently, I'm pretty sure any subdivision has to already have a maintenance agreement with us. With that being said, Winmore would have to amend their maintenance agreement so it clearly identifies the responsible parties. Because that's just the biggest thing. Like I said, really, the negative to private roads, the long-term maintenance and long-term, who's responsible, all this stuff. And if we allow it, if we can make sure we have it all documented, then we can say, hey, look, this was a decision either that the developer wanted to make them private or your HOA 10, 15 years ago wanted to make them private. And with that being said, the village has no stake in it. And if they want it to be public, then they'll have to then bring it up to the standard.
That question as far as public, is that public to everyone or is that public to Marvin residents?
Anyone, because the definition of public is anyone.
Okay, I hope that wasn't a stupid question, but okay.
So, and like I said, I get it. I know Innisbrook came at one point and I think, and they talked about it. The biggest thing Winmore is struggling with is I think similar to what you guys have mentioned is some of these one egress point neighborhoods, especially where Winmore is at, is sometimes GPSs take you through there thinking you can get in the PDS. As well as they have construction traffic either from the homes that are the home that's being built right here beside them. Or just other people in there. I've mentioned to them that a lot of our developments have the new flock system. That's more of a breaking and, any type of crime.
It's a good alternative to a gate.
But their biggest thing is, people, I guess, is the term loitering.
Loitering.
Yes. Yeah, or just hanging out there to waste time or something. Like apparently they've seen people that's pulled off there and done an hour or two worth of work, like on a computer, just in their cul-de-sac. So, like I said, I don't have a recommendation / true opinion if this is the right or wrong thing. I'm gathering as much research and information as I can, as well as I've Winmore's HOA came to council last week, spoke during public comment. I have mentioned this to some of the council members, but it is an item that's on the work session for next week. And I'm sure, as you asked, what's council's, gauge, they're going to throw right back at me what's planning board's gauge. So that's why I already had.
And that's fair, but if and when we hear that, maybe we can discuss, but I think that until they weigh in on it.
Yeah.
And ask us to weigh in on it, then.
Their previous discussion last year ended with them saying, well, I won't speak for the entire council, but it ended with them discussing the merits of the idea.
Mhm.
And some of them said, I have nothing personally against this, but I don't think this is a priority until it becomes a priority. And now the request is being
Yeah.
made.
And I'll mention Winmore is not the only one. I've received just random questions requests if it's from Providence Estates, Valhalla Farms,
Weddington Chase, one time.
Weddington Chase at one time.
I think at one point, and then all
Yeah.
discussed the problem.
So, and like I said, part of it is if you look, like I said, right across the street, there's 2 gated communities because it's in the county and that's just, the county allows private platted roads and subdivisions. So, it's not like an out of stretch type concept. I think from what I've just researched and looking at other municipalities, it's making them public's a generic standard as well as those municipalities are definitely in the street business just as we are. And the more mileage we have, as well as our population, is what allocates our PAL bill funding for us to make sure our roads are maintained. And so if you're taking some of that away,
That's the downside.
that's the downside is that, in theory, the way PAL bill works is like, well, if you have this much mileage and this much population, like the funds received should be able to maintain your road. In theory, but if you're taking away a lot of our roads, and I mean, it could stretch the dollar thin in other areas, for those, improvements in other neighborhoods that are public.
But aren't the funds generated on the miles of roads that you maintain?
Correct. And we don't maintain Windmore right now, so it's
Yeah,
not
but
like,
if we maintain less, the funds would be, of course, less. If we maintain more,
Yeah.
the funds would be more, so it would equal out, I think.
It depends on how much.
that's what I'm saying in theory.
Right, because if a road houses, let's say that it's 2 miles and it only has 12 homes on it, it's gonna be traveled a lot less than 2 miles of Newtown. So
Correct.
my guess is that some of those roads
There's going to be more.
effectively help us maintain the other roads. I see.
Yeah, we do a pavement survey every 2 years, roughly. I think we're about to, where our engineer goes out and does a condition study of all our roads. And that's how we prioritize maintenance over the next couple of years for those roads. And I'll tell you, I mean, from, what I recall is the ones that are on that list are more typical habit, in which they were maintained by DOT prior, would be Marvin Creek or Firethorn, compared to some of the newer ones, that are either one ingress egress that don't have a lot of travel, or just maybe, to your point, don't have a lot of travel in general, because those roads are going to be able to stay to a higher standard because of the wear and tear on them, or the less wear and tear on them.
So I have two quick thoughts. One is this something that we could potentially look at as a variance application? No? Okay, because I mean, it would be, I can see like if someone has a hardship, like if there's crime,
Unique hardships.
a unit, yeah, so like if there's, upped crime in the neighborhood, or there's speeding, or, they have instances where this makes sense for them. I could see doing it on a case by case basis. My other thought is, oh, shoot, just kind of flew out of my head. I heard the mayor say, just an off, not offhanded, but like a comment, just, random comment about, one of the neighbors along, Marvin Road putting up a big fence, and how it felt very enclosed, and we like to see the spaces. So, Marvin being a bunch of just gated communities seems very exclusive, but it's also not welcoming and
Right.
open, and that's one of the things that makes Marvin. It's been very open. But if that's changing, and people really are concerned about, theft or, whatever, then I'd actually like to know why is everyone all of a sudden wanting gates? Like I know why my neighbors are interested.
Improves home values, living in a gated community, your home
It's
values
such a pain in the
improve.
butt,
And it's your biggest investment that you'll ever make, so.
except in your children.
Why do you?
But if it was proposed as a gate when it was first developed, that's the case. But they're wanting to improve their values after the fact.
Sure.
So, and it's one road in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
So now
and-
one in and that's out. So as far as safety issues, who's going to be messing around in a street at the end, and no one on the way out is, the way they came in. So
And that's kind of technically, I mean, it's one road in, but there's a second road, because there's another road that turns into like a cul-de-sac. So there's technically 2 roads in development.
is there a small cul-de-sac at the end? I hadn't even.
There's one at the end, but there's one right when you turn into development, if you turn right.
Okay.
But what's interesting is, so, as I mentioned, our ordinance does not allow private roads, except in one area, and it's rural subdivisions. Which that rural subdivisions, that hybrid between a minor and major, which minors 5 or less lot, or 4 new lots for a total of 5 or less, and then majors pretty much anything over. And majors typically anytime you're installing infrastructure and all that. The rural is the hybrid of the two, where I know we've amended this ordinance now, so I might butcher it. It's either the parent tract has to be 20 or 12 acres, and the average of the lots have to be like, I think, over 2.5 acres. And you can't create more than like 10 lots, but it allows for you to put in one road. 3 Pond Acres is the prime example of that. That is a private road that goes in there, and it's gated. With all that being said, is that hearing this discussion is kind of also giving me ideas, is like looking at this text amendment is I would probably try to put a cap on the number of lots that we would allow for private roads, either new developments or existing. I don't know what that number is, but I think to your point where, especially new developments that they're proposing, you know, if it's 20 homes or whatever, especially if it's a very low dense community. I mean, like, let's take the estates at Marvin Branch just kind of for an example. It's 16 lots on 28 acres.
I'm not sure, is that gated or is that?
It's not gated, but I'm just gonna use that as a prime example of like something like that. I think I would be okay with being gated, but not one like, obviously, I mean, the preserve, I mean, any of these larger ones, just because one, the whole homeowner getting all on board and then taking it over.
Well, that's the point. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, if it takes 100% of the homeowners for the CCNRs, then, you know, it probably won't happen. But on the other side of that, if 100% of the homeowners really want gates,
Yeah.
isn't that a big statement by itself?
And that's kind of what really drove this, was that I know all 12 homeowners in Winmore were on board with it.
But getting 200 people,
Yeah.
they probably can't even agree today's Tuesday.
So like I said, it's very preliminary. I do plan on having a draft text for you guys in October. I'll have some draft ordinances as well for you. I wanted to go ahead and put this on your radar, get some initial kind of feedback and all of that. And as well as once I take it to council next week, we'll have a good direction.
We can be just discriminating between the size of the, I mean,
I agree with that.
I think if you're gonna let the neighbors decide and follow the procedures.
Yep.
Then they should be able to qualify. You shouldn't punish the larger developments as opposed to, it's sort of the same issue.
Yeah.
And we can put all the conditions we want on there, but once we agree, they should apply to all the developments, you know, across the board.
And where it's really going to get tricky is, like I said, when it's coming to who maintains the road. Because DOT does have a process that you can abandon the right of way / take over the maintenance. Because DOT is trying to get rid of the roads because they don't have the money to maintain them as we speak. Winmore, even though it's platted as public, has not been petitioned over to the village for maintenance yet because that developer, and I know word live, sucks, but, and we're in the process of claiming that bond, but like, you know, like Innisbrook and Firethorn, those are being maintained by the village. Like this is, like I said, where Innisbrook is not, where, once again, I'm not trying to discriminate, but one way to make this where it really doesn't impact the village long-term with losing Powell bill funds is if it's maintained by DOT and they get DOT approval for right-of-way abandonment and for them to take it over, then they can put up a gate / like I said, any new development can propose private roads. But ones that are already being maintained by the village, I mean, like I said, I still want to have this opportunity for everybody for doing it. I just want to still make sure that we are protected in the long run as an organization that maintains roads and has that funding allocation from the state. So
The allocation formula is, you know, X dollar per linear mile. It shouldn't impact us.
It's not per linear mile, isn't it? Per
It's-
usage of per linear mile?
it's,
Like,
it's,
I think
it's mileage, it's population.
They actually measured that on Robinwood, and it came out to be a linear mile.
It's mileage and population and something else, isn't it?
I think it maybe is also then deemed if it's a usage to an extent, meaning like DOT maintains like Newtown Road and Marvin School Road and Marshall Marvin. But if like the village takes over Newtown, potentially we would receive a little bit of higher chunk because of the volume on that road. All the roads we own right now are just residential neighborhood roads, so they're probably all wrapped in the same type of
So having
like.
the argument before having 2 miles of roads with only 12 homes, it doesn't get used, won't affect it. Because if you're doing it by usage and linear miles, that's not going to show up at all.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying though, is long term.
Any benefits from there.
But see, we also use the Powell bill funds for, I mean, DOT projects that we partner with. We use Powell bill funds for Greenway. I mean, so the Powell bill funding goes further than just maintaining our current roads. So that's where it's also like,
Does it go towards putting roundabout on Herman in Newtown?
Some of those funds did, yes.
With the agenda.
So,
So they're actually giving us more money than what it takes to maintain the roads?
no,
So then losing it if we're not maintaining the roads, I think doesn't actually make any difference, because I can appreciate, so if they were giving us, let's say that it was costing 7 cents per mile to maintain, and they were giving us 12, then by all means, let's keep all of the roads, right? And then let's keep them all public. But if they're giving us 7 and it costs 7, then if we lose 2 miles, we're not out anything, I
That's-
guess is the point.
that's kind of what I'm saying though, is that if we get 7, because there's other, because what all the Powell funding goes to, it's either resurfacing or routine maintenance. If it's the fog seal, if it's the, then patching and doing all that, because that's preemptive maintenance where we don't have to spend a lot
Preventative.
long-term. So we can either bank up our Powell funds for any type of major projects, if it's a roundabout, if it's a major resurfacing project. But like I said, we also use those funds for joint projects with DOT or Greenway sidewalk, all that stuff. So taking away that funding, even though it'd be losing 2 miles, like it could be 2 miles that those funds on our resurfacing is, 20 years down the road, but we're receiving.
But it sounds like you're saying if it takes 7 cents per mile and it costs 9 cents, because you said they don't give us nearly enough money.
Right. I think that's what we're trying to figure out is
Yeah,
if
I
we
mean,
take away any
that's
miles, we're going
dates.
to be at a deficit. And it sounds like we're saying yes and no.
I mean, that's what.
Yeah, we would be at a deficit, but then it's also, it would put like, we'd be at a deficit because of the projects that we have scheduled at the current moment, either through our capital improvements or with DOT. For example, we're on the hook for like $150,000 for the Providence widening. So it's like, yes, we would be deficit, but at the same time, it's like we then either have to do some type of fund balance appropriation, or it could get, depending on the conditions of roads, like if they were scheduled to be resurfaced, but didn't necessarily need to be resurfaced this year, they get pushed off, like there's a lot that's gonna go into that.
It can push things, or you'd have to allocate funds that were dog-eared for another project altogether to cover the costs. It's what,
Cash flow.
Time, cash.
It's a cash flow issue.
We're borrowing against future income to spend it now.
Well, like I said, that's the way Powell works, is that you get that money each year, and it's supposed to be where the municipalities either can spend all that money yearly on that maintenance or whatever's left over. It always has to stay in the Powell fund. You can't do an allocation from Powell to like fund balance. But you can do it. You can definitely allocate anything from like general fund balance to Powell, which we've done.
but it's not a use it or lose it designation,
Correct.
but it is a designated.
So it comes down to managing that money with your infrastructure that you are responsible for at the, the best of your ability.
Has Powell fund been increasing every year?
They have, due to us taking on more roads and our population.
But not the pay rate of, not.
Correct.
But not for inflation and the cost of asphalt, because it's
That's-
skyrocketed.
And I'll know what our allocation is this year, October 1st. Because we get, for the fiscal year, we get our first allocation October 1st and our second allocation
You
January
guys
1st.
submit a budget? Or do they just tell you this is how much you get?
Yeah, there's a lot of Powell reporting. We have to report to them, how much we spend on engineering for maintenance, all that stuff. If we added any roads, deleted any roads, all that
Right,
stuff.
grant.
So it is fiscally beneficial then for Marvin to own a lot of roads that are very rarely traveled.
Yes.
Okay. That makes a whole lot more sense than the beginning of this conversation. So it is incredibly so there is a huge disadvantage then, fiscally speaking, to us allowing especially small neighborhoods as opposed to the large neighborhoods to actually take over their roads. Because if this Winmore road is in good shape, we may receive 7 cents for those 2 miles for the next 10 years and not have to do anything.
Correct.
And that's
That's
not
what
the
makes,
start of the conversation.
like I said,
That's a very
that's where-
different point.
that's where it makes it tricky. Is
Yeah,
like,
it is.
That's very different, right? As opposed to where we started.
but that's just the thing, is I don't have the specific numbers on really like
Yeah,
the
but
POW bill. Like we receive roughly $160,000 a year.
Sounds right.
but the village as a business can't be affording necessarily to lose money for the sake of other places. And I think that if, my recommendation then would be when you have the conversation with council is to start there.
They're aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that part when we started the conversation.
Like I said, that's a little bit above my pay. I mean, I'm involved in roads, but I help with all that stuff, but I'm not the expert on it.
So it sounds like they're much more educated on this than we are. I mean, they've been doing it for.
Yeah. I mean, when they decided to get in the road business 8-10 years ago, I mean,
Something like that.
like I said, that's why a lot of municipalities, they only allow public because they receive PAL funds, and that's kind of their way to, one, like I said, it's from a standard and development standpoint, but as well as long-term allocation of that business, of that side of the business.
And I think, yeah, it would be
But
listen to what they have to
yeah,
say.
I mean, if you look at like Huntersville, Mooresville, all those places, they don't allow public or private roads. They don't allow private roads.
No gated communities in those.
Shouldn't be. If they're, I know, like, I mean, if they are gated, they're not actually in Mooresville or Huntersville. They're within probably Mecklenburg County or Iredell County. Because county does not receive PAL funding. Any county roads are either public, if they're public, they're maintained by DOT. If they're private, they're maintained by whatever that HOA or who's responsible for.
Does this cover sidewalks too, or that's?
Yes. You don't want to get money for the sidewalks, but you can use PAL allocations for sidewalk.
But if you have sidewalks in your community and you go private, you're then taking over the maintenance of the sidewalks as well.
Most,
Creek's private.
yeah, most of the development, because of the, we mentioned the maintenance agreement. Most any of the new developments, the maintenance agreements state that the sidewalks are public, as in can be utilized by the public, but they are maintained by the HOA.
What about those like stormwater, like all the drainage issues? I mean,
Same concept. It's 50-50 if we're responsible or if the HOA is responsible. It just depends on the development.
okay.
What's 50/50 mean?
Like, when I say 50-50, it just depends on the development. Like, I can name 50% of our neighborhoods that we maintain the stormwater infrastructure, and I can name 50% that it's on the HOA. It all depends on, I think, when it was approved and when we kind of started doing the maintenance agreements and how our ordinance reads for that.
So let me clarify, you said that previously it was maintained by the HOA, but since you've taken over the roads, now it's maintained by the village?
No, that's not, it depends.
Yeah,
So
clear.
Firethorn was maintained by NCDOT. So there was never a maintenance agreement for sidewalk or if DOT was responsible or not. When we took over those roads, we didn't assume taking over the sidewalk because there was never a pre-mentioned agreement. In newer developments like Tullamore and Amber Meadows, the sidewalks are dedicated as public and within the right of way, but the HOA is responsible for maintaining them. And that's in the maintenance agreement that was approved with that development.
Gotcha. So the older ones,
The older ones are the tricky ones.
okay. That's what.
That's
I'm
simple,
understanding,
yeah.
yeah. So we don't have a definitive answer on the older ones?
Because we don't have a maintenance agreement. And when we take it over, all we did from DOT was take over the roads themselves from curb to curb.
Thinking about the Tom Short sidewalk.
Oh, yeah.
There's also some state law on sidewalks that we don't want that online.
But that's why, like, to your point, because of some of the older neighborhoods, like, that's why we have it in our ordinance now that is clarified in the maintenance agreement on who's responsible.
I'm just curious, PDS, is it all private road?
And if you go look at the final recorded plat, they're platted as private right away, private roads.
So most of the gated communities around here are outside of Marvin, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Technically, the only one, and if you count the 3 roads in PD, we don't have, 3 Pond Acres is technically the only like full development that's gated. Sedgefield is gated. It
But
has
that's
6 homes.
county.
Yeah, well, there's 6 homes. It's 6 homes along Waxhaw Marvin that are in
They're in
Marvin.
Marvin, the restaurant lot.
So
And-
we're-
I didn't know that.
So,
Which street is it? Which one? Inverness, I guess, is one, and
It's the first right.
Is it just such-
Right one. First road to the right.
Okay. okay.
On the right
but,
side.
we'll use an example. Sedgefield's looking to resurface their roads and have came to the village to an extent to potentially end, but it's like,
Can't have
they
it.
are gonna have to take down the gate if they want to stick over their roads. And that's where, I mean, the neighborhoods in kind of are in a,
We can't spend public
Yeah.
dollars on a private road. It's illegal. And
so.
we definitely can't spend federal funds on it.
What if there's a shared agreement between neighborhoods and the village of Marvin? Is that
We've
a
inquired about
possibility?
all of this.
A gate is a no-go.
I'm just saying for, any kind of amendment or anything for future, is that even a viable option to share?
The only way that I've seen quote unquote share cost is that if it's a neighbor, like let's take Marvin Creek for an example. Or I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think ones that have multiple ingress egress points. Is that if the main road is public and all the side roads are privately maintained, then those side roads could have gates if they connected with Joe Carr or Marvin School Road. There's an example in Rock Barn in Conover is a perfect example of this. The main strip that goes from the main road to the clubhouse is a public road. There's a huge gatehouse, all that stuff. The gate always maintains open. There's about 5 other ingress egress points that are gated and stay gated and can be closed, whatever, because their roads are private and maintained by the HOA. So it's like, that's kind of the only like hybrid way. It makes no sense because you're still allowing access into the neighborhood.
But you're narrowing it to one point.
Correct. And all the neighborhoods we're kind of talking about here are already 1 point anyway. So that doesn't really benefit. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we'll hear back from,
Mr.
I mean, you've
Reed,
heard a lot from us, so.
Yeah, no, like I
Okay.
said, a lot of the information received, I just wanted to make you guys aware of it. Heck, if you want to do some homework and research, go for it. It's very fun and interesting.
That's extra credit.
I know more about easement law right now than I care to, but thank
But,
you.
but moving forward, I will have a draft text and some sample text that we can fully discuss in October. And potentially, we can then really dive into the weeds if this is something that you guys want to recommend or not.
Right, cool, thank you. All right, I asked if we could get a roundabout update. Because I think there's a lot of information that's going around rumor mill, and I would just like to hear, as official as you can get, because things are changing kind of all the time, but, so.
As official as I can say, the project is still on track for construction to begin in May of this upcoming year of 2023. The right-of-way has been fully procured outside of what was donated by the Heritage Development. It's not that they're per their ordinance or per their approval for the Heritage subdivision, that they're donating that land. It's not that they're not donating it. They've signed the agreement with DOT and all this other stuff, but they legally cannot give that right away because they don't formally own the property yet. Russ has also signed an encroachment agreement, all that other stuff, but it's a weird thing where it's waiting on kind of the sewer approval for the full sale of the land. However, it's not holding up the project at this time because Russ has already signed any type of, like I said, for the next step in the roundabout construction is utility relocation. Russ has already signed all those encroachment agreements to allow for DOT to go ahead and locate per the plans, the utilities on his property and everything. And basically the right of way, as long as it's just formally in hand and signed, I think by the end of November, which if the county, from my understanding with the county and where their sewer stuff is at, they should know by then. Then, like I said, everything will be on for construction for May. And then it's a 8 to 12 week, I think, construction time.
Something like that.
So it should be finished by end of July before school.
Late-ish.
So right after school ends, right before school.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good.
So,
No,
and that,
before, how certain are we this time?
that's 100% certain. And we've had conversation with DOT of, worst case scenario, if for some reason, whatever happens with this is that, we would just have to do the eminent domain process for, Russ's portion, slash, I'm pretty sure we could work something out to make sure, basically the offer that he received way back when for his land was way below value, way below the value that the village received for these roundabouts, the property that we owned. And that was 5-6 years ago. So, either way, like I said, it's on track and it's still, there's no delay in sight to my knowledge. Outside of it, if the county screws up something with the sewer, then it would be a 30 to 45 day, process to basically get the land needed for the, from Russ. So that's, from my understanding, from what I talked to DOT about 3 weeks ago on this, is that, that's our worst case, and we don't want to go that route, and we're pretty confident that we're not going to have to. But if we do, it just sets that back 30 to 45 days. And then the reason why we got the right of way has to be secured by the end of November is to keep the project on track for May. Is they have to bid out the project and have all the right of way in hand. And so it would push that back, but the construction still should begin, if that worst case scenario happens.
You said in November.
Yeah. If that worst case scenario happens, the construction still should begin next summer. It just might leak into school year for completion, which is what we're trying to fully
All
avoid.
the way to, well, that's how it goes through.
Right, there's a hurricane.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And that's, like I said, that's the official from DOT, but
It's like praying there's no rain.
at the
There's
end
a
of the-
hurricane.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, at the end of the day, which we've really been on DOT about this, is that, we're kind of at their graces. We've given them our share of what we owe for the project, outside of the overages. And if they delay it, it's on them, and they will be the ones here at council and all that feeding the pitchforks, because we've done everything that we can to keep it moving forward. And I'll mention that Jones Homes and they've done everything to make sure it keeps moving forward.
Does Jones Homes have a pump station? I think I asked at one point.
Yeah, so
When
they've submitted a sketch plan to
Right.
Union County. The whole issue is that Union County does not have an ordinance to approve them at the current moment. From my understanding is that Union County will have that ordinance in place within the next 30 to 45 days, meaning
it's cutting it close.
that I'm pretty sure the county manager told Christina that the pump station should be considered by the 1st of November. So it, like I said, even at that worst case, if for some reason it got denied, that still gives us kind of the time to then get the right of way for it to go out to bid by the December timeframe that DOT has mentioned to me.
Okay, well, the county is cutting it really close because
Oh, we've had this conversation with the county dating back since March. Like, hey, we know you put this referendum / approving pump stations thing. What's your timeline on getting an ordinance adopted? Because we have a project that's donating right away for this. I mean, they're aware. They still haven't really moved quicker than I think they should have, but
yeah, I mean, there was another, a pretty bad accident just 2 days ago where like a front end of a car is all smashed up and there's a truck like in the woods in Russ's property because I don't know what happened. I just came up right after it happened. So,
We've got our ducks in a row, so we're just waiting on them.
yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate
yeah,
it.
and I mean, like I said, and DOT, to my knowledge, is on top of it. I think even DOT's made a call to the county about trying to inquire about the sewer. But it's kind of in their court to an extent to make sure that last piece gets the right of way. I mean, like I said, it's all signed for, it's just being held at the current moment. But all the other right of way I think it was like 7 other property owners, 8 or 9, something like that, have all been secured.
So are we putting out this information to the public, make sure they understand fully what the situation is and it's not Marvin?
We tell people that all the time.
You can tell them that, if you post it maybe, or
We
try to
posted
figure out
something
in the easiest way.
earlier this year.
I guarantee that we'll be providing an update once this ambiguity around the 1st of November passes,
Yeah.
because then we'll at least know what's going to happen.
So, And that's where, I mean, yeah, I understand how some of the information can get missed, but that it is on track to the best of our knowledge right now. And that's from DOT, that's from, I mean, that's as far as we know. DOT has secured everything out and they, like I said, they have that last piece. It's just contingent upon something that the county has to approve. So,
Is the county's, does it sound like the county, once the ordinance is written and approved, that their intention is to approve the pump station? Or are we just all waiting on them to get this ordinance written and then?
That's why the closing of that property got pushed off to March, right? Because
this property,
it's because it's contingent upon the pump station accepting.
I don't know when their formal closing is, but it is contingent upon and this agreement goes back to even prior to their original submittal. Was it all contingent upon getting sewer to the property?
Mhm.
Because even for the 29 homes,
They
they
have a
would
pump
still need
station.
that, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Because that property, it can't perk.
Right.
It's
Just won't be.
so we have conveyed all this to the county. We've worked with the county to make sure they understand the long term of the success of the Heritage District. Not necessarily saying with the residential component, but trying to do a regional pump station there because Let's property is going to need one. And the goal is to have Let's where it, part of Jones Homes approval was to make sure that they have their, if their sewer gets approved and all that stuff, it's built up, upgraded, and the connection points to Let's property are made available. So then when Let comes, he's not going to be able to put an individual pump station on his property. It would be tying into this where it does create a more of a regional approach. So it provides a more of a greater need, which is why I'm pretty confident with the county, but who knows? I really feel like the village
We've done.
has done everything we can to make sure the county is aware of the importance of all this and all the moving parts to it. And hopefully, once they finally get the ordinance in place, I mean, which is really just a process of what they're reviewing, as in what the county commissioners are reviewing when improving pump stations, instead of just saying yes, no, like they don't like, it's just like an actual like, oh, it has this, it meets this, and this. All right, it's good.
Because this pump station, it's just, they're not building it, they're just, bless you, they're just maintaining it once the developer builds it.
County, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, not to get off topic, but basically the county approved so many pump stations back in the day that they maintain like, I think it's like 120 throughout the county. It might even be more than that. It might be less.
How many in Marvin?
I don't think any at the current, Broadmoor is the only one. But
Broadmoor
Broadmoor's
hasn't
been
been built yet.
And that's what they were trying to push, that Broadmoor.
Tell me how many pump stations?
They don't have any in Marvin.
No, I think the one I know of is down, close to, was it, Kensington?
The Chimneys has one, but that's not in Marvin.
Yeah.
I know, but as far as anyone that's close by, that, I think that's one of the closer ones that
It's
there's.
just concerning, just in terms of like, they're not investing any infrastructure
Yeah, no,
in Marvin.
it all boils down to the county's mismanagement of their capital improvement plans with their sewer infrastructure and not being able to project growth / have funds available for either preventive maintenance or capital projects. So, so like I said, I feel comfortable. I mean, I had a meeting about a month ago with the county staff, water and sewer staff on it. They, Jones Homes was present during that meeting and they told Jones Homes to go ahead and submit their sketch plan. So I felt like that was a good sign.
Okay.
Because I feel like they do know the importance and I'm just hoping, I mean, and they've even said that as similar as Jones Homes was for us with our first rezoning for the Heritage District and kind of being the template / first one is like to set the standard. It's kind of, they're running that, they're going to be that same situation with the county ordinance and what information needs to be provided and all that stuff.
Well, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. All right, discussion of wayfinding and branding project.
So I will be brief. So recently the village has contracted with Arnett Muldrow and Associates to provide the village with a new brand. They're going to design us a brand based on public input and a lot of our current plans and documents. We formed a committee, which Will sits on, to be their steering committee to guide the project. They've already met once. The committee will be holding a branding workshop I think it's the last week of October. And during the first day of that workshop, we're going to be holding roundtable discussions with various groups of stakeholders. And the one that applies to you all is number 3. That is the advisory board roundtable. So this is a formal invitation for you all to attend. There'll be a potential forum notice issued for that day. This roundtable discussion is to get your feedback as to how you view Marvin, its character, its identity, what makes us unique, what makes us a great place to live.
Not Gates. Not Gates.
Well, you can say that. Okay, so make sure there's no gate in the logo.
Maybe we have to
But-
put one in though. I don't know.
But we'll have a community logo. We'll still have the village seal. It'll probably get revamped and that'll be used on official government documents, but
Okay, so we're not talking about revamping the seal
No.
the logo is not the seal.
the seal will be maintained. It might be touched up to be modernized a little bit, to be still used on government documents, but this will be our formal logo that you see everywhere else on everything from business cards to t-shirts and coffee mugs and
Dude, I could have designed this for you.
open a swag shop in the village hall.
I do this all the time.
But yeah, so that's the first part of it. We'll then be transitioning into the wayfinding half of the project, which is directional signage.
That is gonna be
No.
a challenge.
Something I'm thinking about too, and just you talk about this and seeing that roundtable for property owners. I hope that us as wayfinding position holders can come up with some nice signs to invite those property owners all
So-
around and let them have notice of what's going on, so there won't be any doubt that there is going to be a roundtable
The,
at that
the,
time.
the property owners one is more geared towards the commercial side. That's going to be more towards the Marvin Gardens, the Fusion Heritage District area. Properties that could be redeveloped in the future. That's more what that one's for. But yeah, you all are invited to the 3:31. If you can't make that day, if you can't make that time, you can come to the 6:30 public input meeting. Just tell them you're an advisory board member. They'll take a note of that.
Well, actually, I meant the public input thing. I'm sorry. I'll back that up. Not the property owner. I'm not sure.
There'll be public notification.
But the public input meeting, there needs to be a lot of signage. There needs to be no doubt that this is available for all public residents of Marvin to attend.
If we get to this point and someone doesn't know what's going on, they're clearly not paying attention.
Okay, well, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make sure.
We're
I think it's
also,
better to go over than to be, short and,
Mhm.
publicly noticing out there as much as possible.
in addition, there is an online survey that was started on Friday. It was in our newsletter. I don't know if you all are aware, but it's the community branding survey. It's our first attempt to get the public's input for this project. It'll be live. Started on Friday. It'll be live through Monday, October 10th. At which point our vendor will be compiling that data and having that ready for the branding workshop. On day 3, our committee will be meeting to get the draft presentation of that new brand. And then we'll transition into the wayfinding half of the project. And the colors, the shapes, the font, all this the recommendations will be pulled from what's in the logo. So one transitions into the other, if that makes sense.
And share what's on the idea of the mascot.
No one's dressing up as a mascot. Well, that's not.
Okay,
It wasn't
with a
in
dead deer in its
conversation.
mouth.
Let's discuss about maybe owl,
We do have an owl costume, but we'll use that for Marvin Day.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
We have a lot of hawks around here.
well, that's true, yeah.
Can you imagine dressed up as an owl getting snatched by a hawk?
I have a buckhorn costume if you want it. I'll be happy to give it to you.
Anyway, that's the rundown of the project. I just wanted to bring you all up to speed so you know what was going on and to invite you
Appreciate
to that meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion of planning board training.
Since We have not done formal board training in a couple of years, and since then, safe to say almost the entire board has turned over, short of Kelly and Mike.
Does that mean I don't have to go?
No, you still have to pay. It's mandatory. Basically, what I'm asking for here is this will be officiated by Central Iowa Regional Council. We'll have someone here in person, and they'll be briefing you all on everything from land use standards to they'll be to specifics of our own zoning ordinance into quasi judicial procedures, and you all will get a briefer on how variances work with our Board of Adjustment as well.
I kind of took a little bit personal because it was announced right when it was announced right when I was appointed.
It's
So-
directly related to you. Directly related to you. You're like, no, we're gonna let everybody slide, goes in here.
Shots fired.
Great.
I'll add like what kind of drove this is I know it's kind of came up. I know Mike's mentioned a couple of times, like what's our authority or like what is our role in this? And that's kind of the point of kind of going over this process if it's providing recommendations for rezonings or developments and all that of really what your authority is, what that process looks like. I'm not sure if we're going to dive into DRB or not. I haven't
Not a whole other can.
Yeah.
That's a whole other can.
but overall, it will kind of be just overall training on those general land use type application processes that we go through and review, and what you guys should be looking for, really what your kind of scope is within that, and
So they'll come here?
Yes.
Okay, because I noticed the 3 dates are all planning board meeting dates.
Yeah. So I'm asking you all to pick one of those dates.
Oh, as a group?
Oh, just pick one.
Pick one and commit to it, because that's basically a mandatory meeting. So they'll be here on whichever date you pick.
So they'll be during the board meeting.
That'll be the entire board.
Oh,
meeting.
that'll be the board meeting that month,
Mhm.
yeah.
unless there's something you.
Unless something dark.
And that's the goal. My staff recommendation would be
December.
the November, December meeting, because it's so hard to tell what applications we'll have. Like, basically, like the November meeting, like I would have to have an application the next couple of weeks to have it on that agenda. So it's like, and I'm not expecting anything,
November.
but I,
Okay. For you
Well,
all,
just because the one for December, in all fairness, it's after schools have gotten out.
Mm.
And it's only 5 days and people are traveling, and quite frankly,
Yeah.
like December's just,
And you've turned your brain off by
I
then.
agree, December was not.
yeah.
December one's out, yeah.
So I'm gonna,
Sorry.
yeah, so I still move November.
so we'll plan on November. I'll let our vendor know. So we'll have, you all will hear about that next month.
November.
Well, we'll wait 2 months, 2 months.
So we don't have to do anything, we just have to show up, good.
Just have to show
All
up.
right, good, November 7th. 15th.
Very easy.
November 15th.
yeah, and if there's like a TUP application or something like, that's pretty quick. We'll probably still can knock that out, but it won't be any type of development. I mean,
Or a text them.
Yeah. like my goal, I mean, I am expecting another text amendment that would probably be on our October meeting, but we'll get through that.
November.
And for that, we could dial up for that. It's not to take any action, right?
It's still a meeting. So you still have to be here.
The emergency thing is gone.
Once we have a better
Training, I could still.
still technically a meeting. Once we have our full AV set up in here and I don't have to struggle with the computer anymore, I would probably recommend to the council to formally create a remote participation policy for advisory boards, contingent on the review of our attorney, of course. But that'll be down the line once we have a full AV system.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right, so November and review action items. I don't really think there were many.
I yield back.
All right.
Can I say one thing? This, I don't know if I'm gonna have this in action. I wouldn't mind maybe, like, for example, when we had like the roundabout update, tonight is adding either like a planning and development update / open top where potentially some of those questions can be asked,
That would be great.
like
So an action item, but what are you talking about?
like adding, like we have planners updating the agenda, like
You can
doing
call it
something like that.
Kelly's burning questions.
Just do some type of update / open like topic.
If you guys are good with changing the agenda format like that, that's no problem. We don't need action on it.
Yeah, there's always seems to be questions that come up and
I'd recommend.
we don't have, it's not on the agenda,
Yeah,
so we can't ask it,
I
so.
would do it right before this.
We can do it, yeah. Send an email. I'll put it on my list.
Cool. All right. So, board member comments. Want to start? 'Cause you're further along in your packing.
Welcome, Will.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. I'm sure you're gonna make a positive impact to the planning board. It's great to have you. Great job, fellows, and to the whole council and everybody for the grand opening. That was a fabulous, terrific night and very proud moment for Marvin. So
It's a good event.
I was very proud of that, and you guys deserve all the praise for that night. That was a great job, and thank you very much.
Ken?
Done.
Oh,
Ken.
no, I said,
No, oh, you already said no. Okay. Welcome, Will.
Yeah.
I guess we'll formally meet in a second, but, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Same.
Oh, thank you.
Ditto.
Yes, even though it is now costing all this training.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, they'll be,
So the fact that we don't have to go to Monroe to do it or to Waxhaw to do it,
Yeah, we got a wedding.
wedding to somewhere, yeah.
So
Right.
having here is
I
nice.
do want to make a comment. I mean, thank you for welcomes and everything. I'm looking forward to serving on there. I do want to let y'all know that anything that comes up regarding any votes on the Marvin Harris District, I will recuse myself as a property owner, just letting y'all know.
Thank you. I think that will make things less hairier.
Absolutely. I've got no problem with that whatsoever.
Great. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Bob? Mr. Margulies?
Yeah, welcome, Will, to the planning board. And good job, folks, with especially the discussion about the gates. That's been something that we've been intent on. So I was listening, to everybody's thoughts and ideas from your vantage point. So thank you. But welcome, Will.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
Second.
7:16.
All in favor? So
Great
moved.
job. Yeah, we're becoming
Who
competitive.
said rabbit?